In English, please, Lynn asked, wrapping her fingers around her arm. Our brother's closet-turned room is capable of suppressing most of the sounds of our house, on a level comparable that to our parents' room, making it one of the truly private quarters in this abode, Lisa finished, flicking back to the previous page in her notebook. Anyway, Lori called out, wanting to get the topic back on track. Luann, the younger girl, turned towards her. It's good that you realize what you did was wrong and you want to fix it. But like Lana and Lola were saying, it's still very underhanded and the wrong on so many levels. You can't just use someone else's feelings for another person against them, especially for a stupid prank. The blonde glowered at the brunette, who shrank under her gaze. You know very well that Lincoln feels about Ronnie Ann, like the rest of us, and like I said before, he may not forgive you for it, but the fact is you never apologized it after all this time. It just makes it worse. Not only that, you could have literally wrecked their relationship. What if Ronnie Ann fought Lincoln set up those pranks instead of you? She would have dumped him, and then he'd certainly hate you for the rest of your life. Lincoln winced at that realization. Lana leaned in closer to Luna. She really does sound like Mom. The musician Kurt gave a nod. Now, if you had used Bobby as bait, I'd literally told those braces out of your mouth and not care if Mom or Dad makes me pay for new ones. Luann sucked her lips again on instinct, and her pupils shrank to the sizes of peas. Lori softened her gaze, laying the hand on Luann's head. But that doesn't mean there isn't any hope for Lincoln forgiving you. Lynn broke his arm when this mess started, and he didn't freak out yesterday when she sat with them. Doesn't that mean he won't snap on Saturday? Lynn muttered enthusiastically. Lisa gave a light huff. If it helps, I have approximately 80 hours to prepare your opening statement. The sporty loud whipped her head at the prodigy, her brows partially knitted. This isn't a court case. Why don't you just act like you talk with them from your heart? It's not like you can apologize for us all, Lenny piped in, reaching for a small case on the nightstand. If Lynn is going first, we'll get a chance too, right? If it weren't for the fact that it was known that Lenny could focus more while under the influence of her medication, the girls would have their jaws wide open. Lynn gave a substantial nod before jumping to her feet. Guess I better start practicing then. And if it goes well, the Jacques looked at Luann. I'll ask Lincoln if he could talk with you next. A small frown took a look from Luann's face. Thanks. Lana raised a brow as the older tomboy walked towards the door. Wait, where are you going? I think I'm better when I'm moving. Lynn's voice carried on as she strolled down the hall, the intent of finding those shoes stashed somewhere in the room. Guess we gotta wait and see, Luann groaned. Again. I think this will be quicker than before. After all, weren't we all supposed to get Lincoln want to talk to one of us? Lucy spoke with a hint of confidence. She fumbled through her poetry book, her mouth dropping a little as she came across a few tear-stained pics. Actually, our goal was to instill a sense of indifference for a male sibling to no longer become hysterical in our presence. And as I've stated before, while this does require some shuffling to do, we could still make this work. However, it appears that I'll be more reactive to Lincoln's decisions unless he's metaphorical ball shafts into our field. Lisa laid her pen flush with the notebook pages, and that may be a concern if we fail to react accordingly. So business as usual, Lori summarized, before looking over at who's remained. Anyone else have anything to talk about before we close this meeting? She was quick to glare at Lola before adding, But that isn't about last April? Lola squinted her eyes before shutting her mouth and crossing her arms. Lana glanced over at her twin, one particular issue in mind. The light snort had came from her as a devious thought came to the center of the attention. Given that Lola gave Luann a hard time over near the 6-month issue, the upcoming mechanic felt that the princess deserved to be in a hot seat for a bit. I got one. Why don't you keep trying on my overalls? Lola's face felt an invisible chill ran through her. She looked back a bit at her twin before turning aloof. I don't know what you're talking about. Lola, Lana warned, a scowl forming on her face. Remember that talk we had weeks about being honest? And I know you wore 2 of them because there's some glitter on the scraps." At this point, the younger twin knew she couldn't lie her way out, even if she wanted to. Everyone was staring at Lana, giving her a stink eye, likely doubting Lola would actually fess up to her claims. Lola gave a long, frustrated groan. "Fine, I don't have much of a way of a wardrobe ever since most of my gowns were taken away, so I started getting bored of wearing the same plain old clothes every day." She looked back at Lana. "Is it a crime that I want to accessorize?" "Actually, I thought you were trying to look like your other twin," Lenny stated almost immediately. Lori couldn't help but the eye roll that instinctively occurred whenever her roommate said something stupid. "Lenny, I know that," Lenny cut her off. "I meant like Siamese twin or something. She always really has shorter hair now after Lana cut it, and if she had a hat on, I don't think I'll be able to tell who's who." Both twins raised a brow before looking at one another's physical appearance. It was a dead giveaway that they were both identical, but personally wise, they were both polar opposites, a yin to the yang, a red to the blue. However, they weren't without their likes, such as food, the secret fondness of being Girl Scouts, and ratting out to their siblings if they had a common goal. You know, a 6-year-old stuff, and the longer Lana kept staring at Lola, the easier it became to know on how someone could easily mistake her for her sister. The cowlick on her head was now a dead giveaway, though. To test that fury, Lana took off her hat and placed on Lola's head. The other girls started to giggle, which Lola cringe. "Please tell me you washed this." She pointed at the red baseball cap. "Washed it yesterday," Lana grinned. "Nothing like a good old spit shine couldn't fix." Lola's pupils shrank before she gave a shrill and scream and threw the hat on the floor, then rapidly brushed the top of her head to get rid of that contamination. Lana just shorted a giggle. "Just kidding, it was in the laundry." She then picked up her hat and the other girls started laughing. Lola made a pouty face and folded her arms again, giving a low growl while being humiliated. Lana had wrapped her arm around her twin. "Oh, come on, it was all in good fun. Besides, maybe tomorrow we could try to get everyone to fix up our names up." Lola then gave her eye roll before muttering, "I guess." The rest of the week passed relatively quick, bringing in another weekend for everyone else to take a breather from the stresses of work and school. Lana and Lola put their pranks to use after the tomboys scrubbed down most of their overalls for Lola to wear, and even forgoed her use of the hat. That was an easy mark. While she wore different colored t-shirts, it was almost impossible to tell them apart. To make the scheme even more inciting, the twins requested that each sisters give them $10 every time they pronounced their names wrong. The first people to fall for their trick were their own parents, who had trouble take words on to make sure who they weren't seeing things. Lynn Sr. promptly rushed to find a camera after spouting out how he hasn't seen his twins look like since they were in diapers. In school, there was still fun related, with several students getting their names wrong, and 2 teachers wound up making that mistake as well. The 3rd teacher started freaking out, thinking the girls were from The Shining, and promptly want to hide in the janitor's closet. Lucy even accidentally referred to Lana as her twin, before quickly catching herself. The email begrudgingly forked over the catch by the end of the day. To that end, the twins continued to mislead people all the way until the weekend, with 3 other sisters failing to prey of their prank. Lynn had lost Hamilton due to not paying attention when greeting one of the 6-year-olds. Lenny lost 3 on account of her pills had worn off during the other 2 times. One was given back out to her generosity, and Lisa even had to give up on a simple request to ask for the pepper. However, enjoyable the week as it was, it may have came too quickly for the likes of the people of the couple of Louds. Lincoln hadn't seen his sisters ever since Tuesday, which suited him just fine as he had been trying to prepare himself for the arranged meeting on Saturday. Lynn had done the same, thinking up some words best to give to Lincoln to think about it when it was all over, while so working hard on the opening apology. She grew frustrated with how it never seemed to sound right, or no matter how many times she wrote it down, Lynn's waistband, was eventually overflowing with discarded papers. Lenny once again reminded Lynn that she should speak from within, and even seemed like it was Lynn could really hope that Saturday morning. The sense of dread that had been filling her gut over the week was reaching its tipping point, making Lynn more fidgety than crunchier usual games. That's nothing to say how Lincoln was feeling today. He had been having second thoughts. The hour drew near, and Clyde had to convince him to go with the usual "you'll regret it if you don't" speech. The rest of Loud's and Lincoln's social circle had anticipated in a breath as 11 o'clock rolled in, and silently wished for the best possible outcome, or at least headed the same way, with Lincoln becoming his usual self. And that brings us to now. "So, how have you things been going at home?" Miranda asked, as timid-looking Lynn, who was sat on the loungy chair twiddling her thumbs. "Good, if you could say that," the tomboy replied, seemingly distracted as she glanced at the door. "I can safely assume that you're quite antsy about this meeting." "You don't know half of it, sister. I thought we were supposed to get to Lincoln to come these days, but not the other way around." Lynn shuddered a little, gripping the shoulders tight. "I know the last time I saw him, he did manage to freak out. I was only around for a few minutes, and then he had his friends with him." Miranda gave a light smile. "Well, whenever you did seem to have worked out," although her smile dropped into a frown, "he sounded like he had been crying when he has to have this session. Do you know why that might be?" Lynn then shook her head. "I can't even think of a number of reasons, but anything ain't good." "Fair enough. How's school been going, everything?" The Jacques nodded her brows a bit. "Sucky?" Miranda pierced her lips a bit. "Some of the students are still upset with you?" It died down after a while. "I still got a couple of mean looks every now and then." Lynn leaned on her arm as she got comfortable. "My friend Margot started talking to me around the time when Lincoln got out of the hospital. She was a bit mad, no." She paused before snapping her fingers. "Disappointed. She was disappointed at what I did, but it looks like she got past throwing insults at whatever faster than the others." "And what about your sisters? Did they still get heckled in school?" Lynn gave a small huff. "The younger ones, no. My former friend Polly once called me She-Hulk not too long ago, and everyone else who started to mess with my sisters gave me an excuse to live up to my name." She folded her arms. "Now that I've chased the bullies off before, but it felt more personal since." Lynn went quiet as the sound of footsteps reached her ears. They didn't go sound heavily and deliberate, but light up protectorous. The girl sat up straight as the knob turned, her slow breaths catching ever so slightly as anxiety filled her chest. Soon as the door was pushed open, a timid Lincoln stepped in, almost immediately locking eyes with her sister. The snow-capped boy held his arm left to the side of his right, his lips pierced into a thin line, while his legs locked in place in front of his position, right in the doorway. Lynn studied his stance, her eyes locking onto his thumb, before they could wince into the size of dinner plates. Just they thought her brother couldn't be in surprise even further. One of his most visible injuries was now nothing more but a memory. He doesn't have his cast anymore. Then again, it must have been like, 3 weeks? She mentally noted, her lips curling earthwardly slightly. Crap, now he's going to be more defensive if he thinks I'll break his arm again. When it came clear neither children were going to address with one another in words, Dr. Lopez decided to help ease the tension. "Glad you both can join us, Lincoln," she spoke, drawing the attention before flashing a warm smile at him. Motioning a bit towards the couch to her left. "You could sit down in the love seat for the time being. I know you would typically sit on the chair, but given the circumstances..." Her voice trailed off a bit. Lincoln gave a quick nod. "Thanks." His body shook slightly to get rid of the stiffness that he felt before making his way over to the couch. He sat up straight before turning his attention to Miss Lopez, being sure to keep Lynn within his apprehendal. "So," the Hispanic woman folded one leg over the other. "What is the reason why you want to have this session today?" "Last night..." Lincoln paused for a moment. bringing up a few fingers to the bridge of his nose. Wait, it was this week. He paused again, trying to get his thoughts together. Anyway, I had another dream about me being a savvy. It felt kind of real because everything of what happened, I'm still surprised I can remember all of it with how long it felt. A savvy? Lynn thought to herself. That doesn't sound horrifying. Actually, it sounds like something Lincoln would dream about with all these geeky comics that he has. Interesting. Now, as I recall, you told me that you had a previous dream. It was about you and your friends planning to confront your sisters. That got Lynn's attention immediately. Leaning in so slightly she could even hear every word. So was the next? That was the last dream you had. A continuation to that? Lincoln nodded as he opened his mouth as if he was going to say something, but this paused pretty much upon looking at Lynn's direction. The tomboy leaned back a bit, her leg bouncing with energy as she fought back another build-up of anxiety. Am I going to have to step out for this? As much as Lincoln wanted that to be the case, he knew just as much as everyone else needed Lynn to hear this. After all, it was one of the main reasons he especially asked for her attendance. No, he spoke quickly, surprising his sister before he calmed himself. You could stay. It's kind of complicated. Miranda raised a brow. How so? Lincoln then tapped on his index fingers, giving another of himself a moment before speaking again. It started out simple, but it quickly grew into something else. The next few minutes were spent with Lincoln having a rough draft of his last dream, being sure to keep in key with parts, while managing to skip over those that held a little importance. Lynn felt a little lost in the action until it was really starting to pick up. It was also at this point that Lincoln's dreams were much more complex than simple. At school in your undies deal, she and the rest of her sisters were aware of Lincoln's having bad dreams involving them, although this dream didn't seem to be as bad given Lincoln's past reactions. That is until Lincoln came to the part where he and Lynn, who's apparently named Strong Suit, started their own brawl. Lincoln had to pause every couple moments as he talked, whatever it might be because he had a difficult time remembering the talking due to Lynn's presence, or was it because it was too hurtful and soul-breaking for Ace himself to debate on his own? By the time he got through most of it, Lynn had her knees to her chest as she was biting her knuckles, hot tears streaming at the corner of her eyes, her mind stuck with the image of beating her brother to near death and somehow convincing him everything was his fault. This is the fact that Lynn in his dreams was enjoying every second, making the athlete sick to her stomach. As it stood, Lynn wouldn't be considered that notion of doing such thing. How could she even be able to live with herself if she's nearly killed one of her siblings over something that, from the sound of it, was a problem that she and most of her other sisters blew out the proportion, given what she knew about Lincoln's dreams? Wait. Lynn's lip quivered a bit as she began to start seeing the similarities from the dream and the world crap they currently live in. The sisters develop a problem on their own? Check. Lincoln tries to fix it? Check. The girls are stubborn about wanting to resolve their own way and refuse their brother's help? Check. Lincoln grows frustrated because his siblings were frustrated? Double check. Both sides end up arguing, which leads to a fight? Triple check. Lincoln's lost said fight, gets beaten near to death, and believes in his own doing that leads to it? Big fucking check. Lynn's body started to convulse a little as she shook in shaky breaths, her eyes forming pink tint as more tears started to roll down her face. I'm a monster. He thinks of me as an uncaring whack job of a sister? So, caught up in her thoughts, Lynn didn't hear Lincoln say, but she didn't finish me off. She just put me down and it seemed like Lynn was back to her old self. Well, so shocked that she had beaten me up badly. Miranda was about to voice her own opinion when both of them heard sniffles coming from the sporty teen. While it might have been the dumbest question to ask, the doctor knew she'd have to say it was regardless since it'd be rude not to. Are you okay, Lynn? Lynn shook her head. She sniffled again, her voice breaking as it became raspy. I need to be alone right now. Getting off her seat. The 13-year-old shuffled the door open and walked out into the hall. She didn't bother closing it behind her, which allowed the therapist to hear the door slamming shut seconds later. Sounds like she went to the bathroom to clean her face, Miranda summarized internally, before turning back to Lincoln, who had a mixture of surprise and guilt plastered on his face. I didn't mean to make her cry. Lincoln looked a bit lost as he spoke, with his tone sounding like if he was having another internal argument with his emotions. Miranda could see why. In a situation like this, she knew Lincoln was trying to find some peace with his sisters in spite of what they all did to him. However, there was also more vindictive emotions that they would see as a form of revenge for the hurt and trauma that befell him. The doctor could tell from the first day they sat together that Lincoln wasn't a violent person, nor did he even wish to enact vengeance against his siblings. I'm sure she'll be fine, Miranda reassures him, keeping an air of confidence in his sake. And I have a feeling there was a particular reason you asked for Lynn to join us today. Now you said that Lynn didn't attempt to finish you in your dreams, whereas there is your previous visions involving you getting axed by your siblings one way or another. Is there anything else that happened in your dream that defied the norm? Yeah, as the whole building started to go up in flames due to Zach's bombs going off, everyone else made it outside besides me and Lynn. They started thinking we died, but at the very end, Lynn was carrying me towards the exit. Miranda's eyes widened a bit. Really? Yeah. From what I could remember, she took most of the burns when making her escape. She could have easily left me behind. Lincoln bit his lip. But she didn't. A piece of the wood started to fall towards us when we could have made it out, and I woke up before I could know for sure. Okay, Ms. Lopez wrote something down before clasping her hands together. So referring to the dream, you said you kept having nightmares about your sisters coming to end you. And with this new dream, it looked like it was about to be the same story, but with a different tale. But it didn't end that way. And when you had this dream when? Last night, the 11-year-old replied. And the day before, you called and told me that Lynn came to your group table at lunch. Do you think that meeting had something to do with it? Lincoln tapped a finger on his seat, searching for his brain for an answer. He had a hunch that it must have been what he needed to ask to break the mold, but he didn't want to assume. However, he couldn't deny the last dream that broke the standard, where he always ended up paying the ultimate price for crossing his sisters. Even if he wasn't so sure if he survived the last dream. Lynn didn't act that way. I thought she would have on Monday when I first saw her, when she went completely against what I originally thought she'd do, despite being very close. It would also appear that your sisters are vaguely unaware of how you picture them in your dreams. Lincoln raised a brow. What do you mean? Given how Lynn is mostly crying in the restroom, I believe it's clear that she took the idea of being you in a way, describe you as beings of how you view not only her, but your other siblings as well. They're at least aware of your night terrors, but they won't know the full extent of them. Lincoln gave a downcast look. My parents don't know either, and I didn't think I want to tell them about it. You also suspiciously asked that I do not really need to relay this to them, the doctor added. Yeah, I'm starting to wish that I hadn't. Lincoln's eyelids narrowed a bit, feeling a bit of pain that was forgetting something. The boy adopted a curious look, upon recalling another important fact from his dreams. Speaking of Mom and Dad, I have another problem. I just don't understand. My parents, they're dead in my dreams, but I know they're doing okay now, especially since I've talked with Mom yesterday and heard from Dad this morning. I thought they'd at least be able to do something in my dreams, but they can't. I have no idea how or why it's like that. Miranda tapped her pen against her chin. She reflected on the few words that the parents had said in their dream sessions regarding their relationship with Lincoln. With Lynn Sr. coming to the conclusion that he wasn't as close to his son as Rita. However, from Lincoln's perspective, even though that may not be true, it does sound strange, but I think I can see the whole picture as to why, the doctor thought out loud. I had asked you about your relationship with your sisters previously, but it didn't question the one that you have with your parents. So, does that kind of relationship do you have with them? By all means, Do you guys go out and hang out in fun places occasionally, or sometimes? Lincoln started, glancing up at the ceiling and thought. He started to count off his fingers as he listed each activity. A few times we went to Dairyland, though a few times it was just me and my sisters. We took a road trip to State Park last summer, went to a bent beach a few times. Every year we end up going to scratch bottom campgrounds, even though myself and my sisters hate going there. And the boy tapped his foot when he started drawing the blanks. They're usually there with us when we needed them, although I remember one time they had to schedule for us since we all needed help with something, such as the boy started to count in his fingers. I needed help with building a volcano for my class. Lynn needed help with pinching her technique. Lori needed mom's help with a magazine quiz. Lenny needed help with putting on makeup. Luna needed dad's help with some kind of song. I think it was jazz from what I could remember. And Lana clogged the toilet so dad would teach her how to fix it. He caught Miss Lopez giving a look of disbelief on the last one. What's the one she said? It's not too surprising, to be honest. Okay, I'm believing I'm seeing a pattern here. From all the places you listed, where were these family events or just one-on-one times? Taking a moment to reflect. Yeah, they were all family events, but it's kind of hard to only take a few people to those places without the others feeling jealous. Unless they were busy, like one time Luna didn't come since she had a big gig to do. Okay, so where are these times where your parents spent with you without your sisters being around? When I was in the hospital, they visited me every day. Dad even brought me food from home since the stuff at the hospital was pretty stale. Mom would be there for me to make sure I was doing okay, sometimes even telling me about the new novel she's working on. She also brings Lily with her because she wants to hang out with me a lot. Miranda pierced her lips, giving a slight nod. What about before then? Lincoln started to draw a blank again. He searched his memories to find any other times he hung out with his parents, without any of his other sisters, but those memories appeared to be almost non-existent. He scratched the back of his head. I can't remember. I still know about the time Dad taught me how to ride a bike when I was only 3, and there may be more things we did together that I'm having trouble remembering. The boy gave a slight hum as he thought about the time he went to his mother's job during Take Your Daughter to Work Day. Listen how he ruined the first novel she had. Rita didn't mind as it was a total dud and allowed her to focus on new, more exciting story. Now that I think about it, I haven't really hung out with Mom since the first time she took me to work with her. Is it because you didn't have an interest in doing so? Or they were just busy? A bit of both. I think I usually hang out with Clyde, spend more time of reading comics or playing video games, and when I'm not doing that, they're usually either at work or helping my sisters with hobbies or something. A light frown formed on Lincoln's face. Sometimes I end up getting dragged into other stuff to support them, since they claim I'm not really doing anything. Okay, now let me ask you this. Do you feel you have a strong connection with your parents? Lincoln looked at the doctor, as if he grew a second head. Well, yeah, I can always depend on them for help, and we don't always have to go out and have fun all the time. He thought about the circumstances surrounding his dream and why his parents weren't around in it. Heck, even somehow, he managed to fit Ronnie Ann's mom in the dream, and she was still alive. His thoughts shifted again of how his parents would often help the sisters out with their activities, while he had very little to do besides that boy, like him, usually does. Added to that, he only recently started to realize he could draw quite well, but it wasn't noticeable long before his current situation. The boy's eyelids drew a bit as he slumped back in his seat. But it would be nice if we hung out a little more. They probably wouldn't spend much time with me because my sisters were being successful in their own hobbies, while I just sat here and did nothing. Miranda gave a low hum. I see. Now, based on this, I believe the reason why your parents have little impact is because of 2 reasons. First off, it's because we all know you're very concerned about what you do with your sisters, what it may do to you, and that they've been on topic of keeping your mind occupied a little while now. The second reason I have talked with your parents is to understand this too, is that you're at least subconsciously aware of how many times they have spent in your comparison to their daughters. That is likely the reason why they have a little to no appearance in your dreams. As you felt they may have not been worth of any help, it may distract from what really distressed you about it. At least that's how I'm seeing it. Lincoln's frown increased a little bit after hearing that, but the doctor wasn't finished. However, they were pretty much aware of this, especially your father. He had felt that he doesn't know you very well outside of the few hobbies you've been doing. Your mother has stated you were both quite enough. The loud voice smiled a little. She isn't wrong. However, your subconscious thinks otherwise, and drawing back to the last meeting, you said that you believed that you felt inferior into your siblings because you lack talent, right? Given that you've been telling me about your dreams at this point, Miranda gave a light laugh as she spoke. You could be following your mother's footsteps at being a writer yourself. I mean, I've personally never heard of anyone describing a dream like that in such detail. Whenever I have one, I only remember bits and pieces of it, eventually forget about it. Lincoln brushed a little as he remembered sheepishly, rubbing his arm to shave some of the embarrassment. Funny you could say that. I'm actually more of an artistic person. At least that's what my friends tell me. Miranda raised a brow. An artist? Yeah. Lincoln took his phone out, scrolled through the file that he took in pictures from the camera. Upon finding the particular picture, he tapped on it so he could display in full screen, passing the phone to the therapist. Ms. Lopez's eyes became the wide size of the lenses as she looked at the detailed picture of how he drew in art class. Guess the whole family's in full talented people, huh? The Hispanic woman looked in awe, using her fingers to zoom in certain parts of the picture to see them more clearly. Lincoln let out a little laugh escape him. Everyone except Lily, that is, but she might find something to do when she's older. Miranda glanced at the time shown on her device, a small frown formed on her face as she noticed Lynn hadn't returned yet. There was also no indication that she was on her way back here from the lack of footholds in the hallway. Excuse me for a second, Lincoln. She handed the phone back to him. I'm going to see what your sister's up to. As Miranda walked out of the hallway, way out the door, a wave of nervousness began to build inside of Lincoln. It wasn't as strong as before, however, but for those few minutes he spent talking with Miss Lopez, he nearly forgot where Lynn was at. The boy bit his lip and gripped it. Seems like his pants and determination began to set in. Then, he still needed to figure out how the sister fight protocol came to practice and why he wasn't aware of it until that very weekend. It might even give him some insight as to why his sisters acted so hostile and demanded that he not get involved. Miranda walked down past the hallway, idly listened to a few conversations she could hear through the doors she passed. Typical physical therapy, skincare specialists, regular checkups were the room that was placed of her business. There were a few other therapists in their section a few doors down that was specialized in mirage counseling. As the Hispanic woman walked past through a single bathroom room, she almost didn't catch quite a few sobs, forcing their way to thick wood. Backtracking a little bit, the doctor lightly rapped her knuckles around the door. Lynn, are you in there? Yes, came to the teen's meek reply. You're not using the toilet, are you? No. Can I come in? A few moments later, the doctor heard a soft clicking from the doorknob as the lock was undone. Turning the knob, she gently pushed open the door to find Lynn sitting on the toilet seat, her cover, only using the toilet paper to clean her nose. Her eyes were red and puffy as a few new tears leaked down her already tear-stained face. The waistband was full from the used toilet paper. Okay, negative on the face ceiling, Miranda sighed awkwardly before kneeling down in front of the girl. What's wrong, Lynn? I can't do this, Lynn squeaked out, blinking more tears away. I can't do this, knowing Lincoln thinks more of me as someone who wants to break him down. How am I supposed to fix that? Lynn, I know it's hard right now, but Lincoln doesn't see you that way. The jock glared at the therapist. He said I was going to kill him. How in the hell can you say that when he doesn't, when I was sitting right there? Miranda flinched back a bit due to her screams, reverberating around the tiled room. Look, Lynn, I know you're upset, but did you hear what Lincoln said immediately afterwards? Lynn gave a deadpan stare. What else would I need to hear? It isn't about him seeing some kind of murderer in me. Well, if you were paying attention before you left, you could have heard him say that you didn't kill him in his dream. The sporty Howard blanked twice, before curiosity growing. What do you mean? Lynn then grabbed more slips of toilet paper before blowing her nose. He said that you intentionally thought about killing him, but you seem to revert back to your usual state and let him go. After then, there's some events that happened that you aren't important right now. Just tell me what happened, Lynn sniffled, before tossing the snot-ridden paper into the bin without looking. Miranda gave a light sigh. Long story short, the factory everyone was fighting started to catch on fire. Everyone began to evacuate. You and Lincoln were the only ones missing, but then at the last moment, you came bursting through the flames, carrying your brother to safety. Even if Lincoln was still confused about it, because you could have easily left him for dead. But you didn't. He's unaware if you both made it out, since he awoke before knowing for sure. But the fact that he dreamt about you saving him makes it clear about one thing. You performed something that started changing his opinion about you, and you might be starting to realize that you aren't a danger to him. Lynn then cast another glare at the doctor, thinking this had to be vile. Yeah, right. I bet whatever chances I have of getting a sports career, that Lincoln dreamed about me tearing him a new hole to poop through whenever he fell asleep. I knew this session had to be a hoax anyway, and it was probably because he made up by little Miss Lopez herself. Like, honestly, she had the nerve to create this whole world, meeting me out of nowhere, and her initial rant out was cut short when the psychologist spoke again. I know you think I'm lying to you, Lynn. That's the look on the face says it all. Miranda gently placed a hand on Lynn's. But I'll be honest with you. When we first spoke about each other weeks back, I couldn't do anything to help you unless you let me. Lincoln surprised me well when you requested this meeting. I highly doubt he would have ever went through this if he didn't think you were someone that he could confide in. I know he is most likely scared and uncertain about all this, but I know that I can trust his sister to help guide him through these troubles. Lynn reflected on the psychologist's words if they held sincerely, along with studying her face for any sign of facade. As the tense moments passed, Lynn gave a sigh of defeat when the psychologist couldn't find anything. Are you sure he really did all that? Positive. Lynn nodded. Okay. She got out of the seat and started for the hallway. Wait! Lynn started firmly, softly, making the short teen glance back. The woman then grabbed the paper towels before wetting them in the sink. You can't have a heart-to-heart with your brother with a dirty face like that, right? Lynn touched her face, feeling the dampness from her tears and almost clear snot that left her sinuses. Guess not.